Hey everyone, welcome back to Confess and Chill. How are you all doing tonight? If you've been here before, you already know this isn't the place for easy stories. It's where people whisper the kind of truths they usually keep buried. And if you're new here, take a breath. Tonight's confession begins with a single comment from a teenage girl and ends with a woman discovering just how dangerous being underestimated can be. The story is titled, "My husband's ex told the kids to treat me like a babysitter, so I clocked out and everything changed." She'd almost believed she'd found her rhythm. 2 years into the marriage, shared custody calendars, soccer practice pickups, alternating weekends, it finally felt stable. Until that Friday evening, Violet, 13, breezed through the front door, backpack half unzipped, phone glowing against her cheek. "Mom says we don't have to listen to you," she said. "You're just the babysitter," Bo, 10, chimed in. "She said you're not real family, just temporary help." The woman blinked, wooden spoon hovering over the pan. The words landed like splinters, small, sharp, impossible to remove. "Your mom said that?" she asked. Violet shrugged. "She just said not to forget who our real mom is." Bo giggled, proud to have memorized the line correctly. That night, while her husband watched TV, she loaded dishes with the slow precision of someone trying not to shake. Each click of porcelain sounded like punctuation on a sentence she hadn't agreed to. Temporary help, the phrase kept echoing. She'd sacrificed promotions, weekends, whole pieces of herself for a family that still thought she was hired labor. When she finally slid into bed, her husband murmured, "You okay?" "Yeah," she lied, but something behind her eyes had already turned. Morning sunlight spilled across the kitchen tiles. She stood in her robe, coffee cooling between her hands, and decided on an experiment. At 5 o'clock that evening, when dinner was ready, she set down exactly 2 plates, hers and his. When the kids came running, she smiled politely. "Sorry," she said, "my shift ended at 5. Bo frowned. "But what about us? Babysitters don't work overtime without pay," she answered. Her husband coughed into his glass. "Wait, what? Just following the job description your ex assigned me." At first they laughed, then they realized she wasn't joking. Saturday morning, she didn't move when the alarm rang. Normally she'd be up first, pancakes, missing homework, mismatched socks. Instead she rolled over and whispered, "Off the clock." By 7:40 a.m. the kitchen was chaos, burnt toast, forgotten lunches. Violet crying over a missing shoe. They left 20 minutes late. She stood at the window watching the car pull out, guilt and relief fighting for the same space in her chest. There was peace in it, watching the system collapse without her holding it together. Maybe that's what happens when love turns into labor. You start to realize invisibility was never a virtue. By Tuesday, tension hummed through the walls. Her husband cornered her near the sink. "What is this?" She turned off the faucet. "Just a woman doing what she's been told." He stared. "By who?" "Your ex," she said evenly. "Through your kids. Apparently I'm the help." He rubbed his forehead. "She didn't mean it like that." "No," she replied. "She meant it exactly like that." That afternoon she drove to her sister's place, left a note on the counter, "Shift over, text if you need coverage." At her sister's apartment they drank lukewarm coffee and watched reruns. For the first time in months she laughed, a rusty sound turning into oxygen. Her phone buzzed, 5 missed calls from him. Messages followed, "Where are you?" "The kids are waiting, please call me." She typed one line, "I wasn't booked for afternoon care." By the weekend she had turned politeness into art. She did the chores that affected only her. She moved through the house like a guest at her own wedding, smiling, detached, ghostly. Then came Violet's birthday. Weeks earlier she'd planned every detail, decorations, cake, playlist. That morning she deleted the reminders from her phone. When Violet came downstairs, the living room was bare. No balloons, no candles. "Babysitters don't plan birthday parties," she said calmly. Violet's face crumpled. Bo stared at the empty table. By afternoon, guests arrived to find a dark house. On the door hung a note, "Birthday party canceled, contact your event coordinator," aka the parents. 20 minutes later the ex-wife arrived, perfect hair, perfect fury. "What kind of monster ruins a child's birthday?" The woman handed her an envelope. Itemized bill, hourly rate, missed planning hours, emotional labor surcharge. The ex ripped it in half. Her husband said nothing. But every person in that doorway understood. The babysitter had quit. That night, silence filled the house like water. Violet cried behind her door. Bo whispered under his blanket. Her husband lay on the edge of the bed as if proximity might burn him. She stared at the ceiling, realizing how easy it was to erase a woman who kept everything running. 2 days later came the knock. Violet stood there, eyes red. "I know you worked hard on that party," she whispered. "I just wanted Mom to think I was on her side." "Loyalty's tricky," the woman said softly, "but it shouldn't cost kindness." "I didn't know it would feel this bad," Violet sobbed. "That's how you know it matters," she said, pulling her into a hug. For a moment peace returned, fragile, possible. 3 days later it shattered. A courier delivered an envelope heavy with legality. Inside, An emergency motion accusing her of neglect, her clocking out texts, screenshots, timestamps, evidence. She laughed once, breathless. In a world like this, a woman resting looked like a crime. Her husband came home waving the papers. "She's out of control," he said. "We'll handle it together." That word again, together. She nodded, but the sound of it had gone hollow. Court was swift. The judge dismissed the ex's petition, but when the others left, he asked her to stay. "I'm not supposed to show you this," he said quietly, turning his screen. Emails from her husband to his ex, plans, strategies, proof of coordination, push her to quit, collect everything. She's unstable, her vision blurred. The judge scrolled further, insurance paperwork, a $2 million policy in her name, beneficiary, the ex-wife. Her voice cracked. "How long?" "Long enough," the judge said, "that you need to be careful." That night, she served dinner like normal. Her husband smiled, oblivious. "We won," he said. "It's over." "Yeah," she answered, "over." When he kissed her forehead, she didn't move. She just memorized the way betrayal can pretend to be affection. She didn't sleep. She planned copies. Cloud backups, a private investigator who didn't blink when she said the word plot. By Friday morning, her husband appeared in the doorway holding 2 mugs. "Weekend trip," he said, "just us." "Cabin in the mountains." He smiled the way people do when they already know the ending. She smiled back. "Perfect." He didn't see the tiny black recorder clipped under her sweater. Sometimes survival means letting the trap close so you can prove it exists. The road curled upward through pine and fog. He drove one-handed, humming to a playlist from their first year. "You know," he said, "people think you're cold, but I know better. You just like control." "Control keeps you alive," she said. He laughed, still dramatic. She watched the forest slide past and thought, drama saved my life once already. They reached the cabin at dusk, remote, too pretty, too close to the edge, exactly as described in the emails. He built a fire, poured wine, played their song. "You and me," he said. "No kids, no noise." "A restart, fresh start sounds good," she said, smiling so gently it scared even her. When he stepped behind her, his hand rested on her shoulder. Then another push, subtle, almost playful. She stepped forward, steady. "Beautiful view," he said. "Almost unreal," she answered. The wind howled. When he moved again, she pivoted. He stumbled. Gravel skidded. "Careful," she said. "You could fall." Their eyes met, and he knew. Hidden mics captured his whisper. "You were supposed to fall. You were supposed to die." Her finger found the panic button. By the time officers arrived, the confession was already uploading to the cloud. He went to prison, so did the ex. The kids stayed with her. Violet cried for weeks. Bo asked, "Was it our fault?" "No," she said. "Adults make their own monsters." But when they slept, she cried too, because healing is loudest in silence. The weeks that followed the arrest felt like living inside someone else's life. Reporters hovered at the edge of her lawn, their microphones like weapons dressed as curiosity. Headlines called her the babysitter wife, a name that made strangers stop her in grocery aisles and whisper, "You're the one." She stopped correcting them. Sometimes silence is the only dignity left. Inside the house, the air carried a strange stillness, half grief, half relief. Every creak of the floorboards felt like the house remembering too much. She moved slowly through rooms that had once belonged to a marriage and now felt like evidence storage. On the dresser, the picture frame from their wedding day, glass cracked, dust in the corners. She left it there, a relic of everything she refused to polish anymore. The children came home with 2 careful smiles. Violet kept asking, "Are we okay?" Bo trailed behind her, carrying his silence like a backpack too heavy for his age. "Yeah," she'd answer, "we're safe. That's different from okay, but it's a start." At night, she'd wake up to footsteps, small, hesitant. Bo would stand by her doorway. "Can I sleep here?" She'd lift the blanket. "Always." One night he whispered, "Do bad people always look nice first?" Her chest ached. "Sometimes," she said. That's why we learned to look twice. Therapy started on a Tuesday. 3 chairs in a circle, a box of tissues, sunlight leaking through half-closed blinds. The therapist asked Violet what she remembered about that night in the mountains. "Just the police lights," Violet said. "They looked like fireworks that didn't know what to celebrate." Bo said nothing. He just held the stress ball until it squeaked. When it was her turn, she said, "I keep dreaming that he's knocking on the door, not to hurt me, just to explain." The therapist nodded. "Closure is the last lie we tell ourselves after survival." That sentence followed her home, echoing through quiet rooms. 3 months later, she took a job at a local bookstore, part-time, quiet, surrounded by paper and people who whispered instead of shouted. Every morning she'd walk the kids to school, breathe the cold air, and think, this is what normal is supposed to sound like. At work, she met strangers who didn't know her story. That anonymity felt like grace. She became good at recommending novels about women who left and found themselves in the aftermath, fictional mirrors of her own truth. One evening, a woman bought a copy of The Bell Jar and said, "Do you think people ever fully heal?" She smiled faintly. "I think people learn to hold the broken parts without cutting themselves." It was the first time she heard herself sound wise instead of wounded. 6 months later, a journalist requested an interview. She almost deleted the email, but curiosity won. They met at a cafe by the lake. He was younger than she expected, notebook trembling in his hands. He said, "The public wants to know how you found the courage to fight back." She laughed quietly. "I didn't find courage. I found terror and decided not to die from it." He wrote that down like scripture. Then asked, "Do you forgive them?" She stirred her coffee until the spoon clinked. "Forgiveness isn't the point," she said. "Living them is." When the article came out, that line became the headline. Her inbox filled with messages from women who said, "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." For the first time, she realized her story didn't just survive her, it served someone else. That winter, the power went out during a storm. Rain hammered the windows, thunder rolled over the lake. She gathered candles, her hands steady in the flicker. Violet sat cross-legged on the floor, Beau wrapped in a blanket, the dog whining at every gust of wind. "Tell us a story," Violet said. So she told them one not about betrayal or loss, but about the first time she saw snow as a child. She described the way light bends through flakes, how silence becomes beautiful instead of heavy. Halfway through, Beau fell asleep. Violet whispered, "You're really strong, you know that." She smiled. "No, I'm just still here." Sometimes surviving the storm doesn't mean defeating it. It means keeping the candle lit long enough for morning. By the time the case was officially closed, the seasons had looped around like they were giving her a second chance at every month she'd lost. Violet turned 15. Beau joined the school soccer team. She watched from the sidelines, coffee in hand, the kind of proud that doesn't need applause. After the game, Violet hugged her. "You know, Mom," she said, the word Mom landing solid, unhesitant. "I think we're okay now." That night, she cried in the kitchen, not because of sadness, but because peace had finally arrived and didn't feel temporary. Then one evening, the doorbell rang. She opened it to find a familiar face, her husband's sister, eyes red, voice trembling. "I didn't know," she said, "about the plan, about any of it." The woman nodded slowly. "I believe you." His sister handed her a small box. Inside were old photographs, vacations, holidays, smiles that no longer belonged to anyone real. She almost threw them away. Instead, she took them to the lake. One by one, she dropped each photo into the water and watched them drift. Not destruction, release. Spring arrived. The garden behind the house began to bloom again, daffodils pushing through stubborn soil. Beau helped her plant herbs. Violet painted the fence. On weekends, they'd walk into town, buy ice cream, argue over flavors. People still stared sometimes, whispering her name like folklore, but she didn't shrink anymore. She'd learned something essential. Peace isn't the absence of noise, it's learning which voices to ignore. One morning, she found a letter in the mail with unfamiliar handwriting. No return address. Inside, "I'm sorry," no signature, just that. She burned it in the sink, watched the paper curl into black petals. Then she whispered, "I accept the apology you can't make to yourself." For the first time, her heart didn't tremble afterward. They moved to a smaller home near the water. 2 bedrooms, creaky floors, sunlight that pooled across the wooden table. The realtor called it a fixer-upper, she called it ours. The first night, Violet hung fairy lights, Beau built a blanket fort. They ate takeout on the floor, laughing when the dog stole noodles from the box. At one point, Beau looked up and said, "It feels safe here." And she realized safety doesn't always come with locks. Sometimes it comes with laughter that doesn't check the shadows first. Time blurred the edges. Violet went to college to study psychology. "I want to help people who don't believe they can heal," she said. Beau became tall, soft-spoken, the kind of boy who opens doors and means it. Every holiday they came home to the same lake house that once held so much pain, now echoing with warmth. She still worked at the bookstore. Sometimes customers recognized her name and whispered, "Are you the woman from?" She'd smile and cut them off. "I'm the woman after that." One summer evening, she walked down to the dock with a cup of tea. The sunset spilled gold across the water, and the air hummed with crickets and forgiveness she hadn't planned to feel. Violet joined her, hair pulled back, eyes reflecting the same horizon. "Do you ever think about him?" Violet asked. "Sometimes," she said, "but not the way I used to. The memory's smaller now, quieter." "Do you hate him?" "No," she said after a pause. "Hate takes too much tending. I'd rather grow something else." They stood there in silence until Beau called from the porch. "Mom, pancakes again," she laughed. "Always pancakes." As they walked back to the house, she thought about how survival had rewritten her story. Not into tragedy, into testament. You've just heard a confession that started with a cruel whisper and ended with a woman finding her voice. She was once the outsider, the babysitter. Now she's the heartbeat of a home that finally knows peace. Maybe you judged her, maybe you saw yourself in her. But if you felt something tonight, if even one part of this story stuck under your ribs, tell me what it was. Because the truth is, healing doesn't come from silence. It comes from speaking, listening, remembering, and choosing peace even when no one believes you deserve it. Thank you for staying till the end. This was Confess and Chill, where the quietest stories speak the loudest and the survivors become storytellers.